Welcome to Conversations Different, a podcast from the Santa Fe New Mexican, featuring the interesting people, places, and issues of northern New Mexico. I'm your host, Inez Russell Gomez, and today we are speaking to Senator Ray Luján, who will update us about important national issues that impact New Mexico. Welcome, Senator.
Always good to be with you. Thank you so much. And thank you for doing this and sharing more information with people all around New Mexico. And I wouldn't be surprised, Inez, if around America and probably around the world. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. I think there's so much going on and so much false information out there. It's really important to talk to people who are right in the middle of what's actually happening. So what are you working on right this minute? I know it's a busy day in Washington.
Well, there's currently votes going on the Senate floor, but today I introduced legislation that would help more families across the country that are caring for loved ones. Right now, my House Republican colleagues and Senate Republican colleagues are moving a piece of legislation that's referred to through the reconciliation process. This is a piece of legislation that is built around giving more tax policy to the President of the United States, and it's building off of what was done in 2017. The facts of the 2017 tax legislation, as well as this bill, is that the majority of this, the supermajority, will go to the most wealthy in the country. The top 0.1% will get about a $400,000 tax break. And what my Republican colleagues are doing to pay for this, well, they're not fully paying for it. They're paying for about half of this stuff. It's going to cost over $4 trillion. They've come up with about $2 trillion in cuts. But part of those, unfortunately, are eliminating federal dollars to Medicaid services into all parts of America. And as you know, in New Mexico, after Governor Susana Martinez, a Republican governor, chose to expand Medicaid as a part of the Affordable Care Act, more New Mexicans right now, almost 74% of the state, are Medicaid beneficiaries. And we also have an older state, as you know, a lot of Medicare beneficiaries, and some of them benefit from both Medicare and Medicaid. Now, one of the programs that I'm worried about getting cut are initiatives to allow us, as we get older, if we can't be taken care of at home, to go get into a facility. So the legislation that I'm introducing, or that I introduced and that I'm introducing with other colleagues, would help more families, whether it's to take care of loved ones at home, like the way that I was born and raised, or if we get to a place where we can't take care of a loved one at home and we need some more support, that we're able to do that with additional support and coverage through Medicaid. And so that's what I'm working on right now. I've also been working on holding hearings to get witnesses in to answer questions about the impact of the tariff policy, which is really hitting folks as a national sales tax, and asking them about what's going to happen if these nutrition programs go away, if it's harder for food banks to get food to help families, or school nutrition programs. What happens if students can't get access to school lunches, or Meals on Wheels for seniors? What happens then? And oddly enough, Inez, it's been farmers and ranchers that have been coming to talk to me about their concern with the devastation to these food programs, because a lot of local farmers, they're able to sell their local produce, whatever they're growing, whether they're a rancher or a farmer, to food banks, to church pantries, to schools, things of that nature, and getting that fresh food produce locally grown, and also working to help local farmers and ranchers. And that's all being devastated. So, I mean, there's so much going on right now, but I've been holding hearings in that space, and then also on these tariffs, on these national sales tax issues. It's surprising to hear how many Republican constituents, Republican-owned small businesses, and these are self-described Republicans that are coming before us, right, telling us in Congress how their small businesses are being devastated from these tariffs, from these national sales tax. Everything's just getting more expensive. It's not getting cheaper. And
we just got the inflation report yesterday, and it's not getting better.
It's not. And quite honestly, if the national or the other international tariffs that President Trump has put on the table that the courts are making decisions on now, if those go into effect, it's going to get even more expensive, and it's going to hurt more families.
Yeah. What I wonder, part of the interesting thing is that, someone far away from Washington, we're in flyover country. We see what's going on, and there's so many different points of attack, because you've got the big, beautiful bill which is where all the cuts to food and Medicaid could be. And then you've got, his budget, which is doing things like unfunding tribal colleges. And then you've got just the tariffs, which, as you say, are a national sales tax. What can individuals do to fight back?
Mm.
Because they always say call your senator, but our senators are on the right side of these issues. What else can we do?
Well, first off, this notion of this legislation, which my Republican colleagues are calling a big, beautiful bill, it's actually a betrayal. It's not being honest. And today, the Secretary of the Treasury was before us in the Finance Committee. And for me, it felt like just one big, beautiful lie. There was no honesty in responding to stats and facts that have been coming out of the Congressional Budget Office, looking at independent scorekeepers. And by the way, the Congressional Budget Office were hired by the House Republicans who are in the majority now. These are Republican hired staff by Republican leaders. And now the president and others are saying that they disagree with their work. The American people have been coming forward more and more. They're showing up to town halls. For my Republican colleagues who refuse to have town halls, they're having them for them. I've been chatting with folks at grocery stores. I tell folks not during church, but after church. Wherever we may be, we need to be chatting, but calling folks, showing up, writing those letters, getting the facts, empowering yourself with the facts of what's going on right now and understanding what's going to impact you, and sharing those stories and those testimonials, whether it's through social media, whatever the tool may be. It all matters and adds up. And I've been able to use those testimonials from constituents, share personal stories in all of these debates, and appreciate everyone across the state of New Mexico, Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, who have spoken to me and said this is not what they signed up for those that voted for the president, and others that are very concerned that their lives are about to be crushed because these programs are going to be devastated and taken away. Yeah. So we just want to encourage people, keep showing up, keep talking, whether it's, a gathering, whatever it may be, peaceful protest, be a part of that, be an active citizen.
No, that makes sense. And one of the things about the Medicaid cuts, it's not just individuals that hurt. In rural New Mexico, the hospitals, the nursing homes, all of the places where people get care could be devastated if they cannot receive the dollars that they're, used to using or that they're expecting. So what happens, to the hospital in Las Vegas or in Taos when Medicaid goes away to some degree?
So looking at this big piece of legislation, which is complicated and cuts more than just Medicaid or food programs, medical research. Think of, I'm wearing a pin here with the advocates of Alzheimer's. We're in Washington, D.C. this week, and this is to show support for loved ones that may have Alzheimer's or dementia. All of that research is being devastated today. But when Medicaid dollars freeze up, rural healthcare centers feel this more than anyone else, because so much of that revenue that keeps that place running is from Medicaid beneficiaries. So I'm very worried that rural healthcare facilities across New Mexico could close. And then the nutrition programs. I was surprised to learn, Inez, that about 10% of the revenue that goes to grocery stores across the country comes from these supplemental nutrition assistance programs, folks that are using the EBT to purchase goods, things of that nature, about 10%. So not only rural healthcare facilities, but I'm worried about these small little rural grocery stores that are already operating on the margins. What does it mean to them?
We almost have food deserts in some of the little towns.
Yeah, they're everywhere, as we know, in New Mexico, and this could make it worse. So I'm very, very worried about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's an incredible burden to place on a state that's already, on people who are already struggling and communities that are struggling. And it seems like the only beneficiaries are people at the top of the food chain in this country. Like, who benefits from this bill?
Yeah. So look, if you're making, $2 million a year or more, you're going to get more of a tax break. Like I said earlier, the top 0.1% get $400,000 more in tax cuts. Some people will never make that much money in their lifetime. And look, I applaud my friends that and folks that I don't know that have done well in their lives, that have accumulated wealth. I hope they do more and they do better. But I don't think they need a tax break. If you're making $10 million a year, you're doing well. You probably don't need a tax break. How about we push that to other families that are not making that much like they are, Let's support these programs that are going to help families. Let's invest in America. And Inez, look, one of these budget reconciliation vote around the clock, we call them vote-a-ramas, that we had recently. A few of my colleagues in the Senate had amendments on the Senate floor. One of them said, look, if you make $10 million a year, can we all agree that that's the cap? If you make $10 million, you're not going to get a tax break if you're making more than that. My Republican colleagues all voted no. So then they raised it to $100 million. Asked the same question. My Republican colleagues voted no. $500 million. My Republican colleagues voted no. One of my colleagues suggested, okay, well, let's say if you make $1 billion a year in America, you're doing well, we're not going to give you a tax break. We're going to push it to hard middle class working families and folks trying to get into the middle class. Let's go there. And they all voted no. Wow. So they're not hiding from what they're up to right now. And if you look at the 2017 tax bill that they had and what this one is doing, this one is on steroids, pushing even more of these resources to folks across the country making millions of dollars a year. I just don't think that folks that are making that much money need a tax break. Let's make sure we help people working hard across the country, like teachers, police officers, firefighters, folks that are delivering our mail. Like, let's help folks like that all across New Mexico and all across America.
Right. That's a great point. And on that, we'll take a quick break and be back in a moment with more Conversations Different.
We make renewable doable. We're positive energy solar for a cleaner, brighter future for all. Positive energy's the right call. Feel good about your energy bill. Help save the planet too. Your trusted solar company, working hard for you. Generate positive energy. Positive energy solar.
Back with Senator Ben Ray Luján, who is in the midst of voting in Washington, D.C., and we're lucky he has a few minutes to talk to us. We were talking before the break about how the current legislation they're considering does a lot for very rich people and perhaps not as much for middle class and poorer people. Have you guys on the Democratic side had any discussions or have you figured out why do they only want to help the richest people?
I'm not certain, other than, the president's been clear that his supporters are going to get some benefit. And if we saw those that the president surrounded himself with on Inauguration Day, they were some of the richest people, not just in America, but from around the world.
The world.
It was a who's who in that space. Where contracts are going, things of that nature. It's all to these very, very wealthy individuals in the United States. I just don't understand why my Republican colleagues, when they're moving this tax policy right now, Inez, why many of my Republican colleagues will say in hearings on the Senate floor, on the House floor, that they are not going to touch Medicaid, that they're not going to touch Medicare, that they're not going to touch these nutrition programs. But when you look at the language of the legislation that they're voting on, it devastates federal dollars to Medicaid. It sets up a trigger that will cut Medicare by $500 billion, like $534 billion. House Republicans initially had a target of cutting about $250 million from food programs. Well, they exceeded that. It's like 300. I think 300 is what they went after, $300 billion. Look, when I was growing up, my grandma and grandpa, Celedon and Estora, my mom and dad, and you'd get in trouble, they would tell me, look, the cover-up is worse than the lie. Tell the truth. And now there's this whole cover-up because all the truth and the facts have come to fruition. They're on paper. There's votes that are showing this. The Congressional Budget Office, the independent scorekeepers, they're putting this all on paper. I mean, heck, there's even conservative think tanks that are picking this thing apart and showing it for what it is. I just don't understand it.
No, it doesn't make sense. And one of the things from conservatives is this is a deficit buster, because if you believe that it matters that we owe trillions and trillions of dollars and we need to start paying that down, especially because interest rates are still somewhat high, this doesn't do that. And
Inez, this is another one of the big lies. So, today the Secretary of the Treasury, Bessent, he said that One, he disagreed that this was going to add to the deficit that we have every year and to the debt of America. That's a lie. There's no question that this adds over $2 trillion to the debt. Fact.
Yeah, that's it.
Second, what he has the audacity to say is that the Trump tariffs are going to pay for it. Well, whether it's the Congressional Budget Office or it's conservative think tanks or real fiscal conservatives in America, they're saying it's not true. It's another lie. So again, the cover-up is worse than the lie, and people are learning more and more about what's in here. And, you know, Inez, I've stopped saying, oh, well, it's not completely true, or, well, you know, they're not being completely honest. No, they're lying. Right now, it's a lie, and it's a cover-up, and it's so bad.
One of the things they keep trying to push, it got pushed out, was the selling off public lands. But evidently the Republican senators are trying to put it back in the bill. And that's another no for New Mexico because, you know, we'd like our public lands and we want them protected. Do you think that has a chance of ending up in the Senate version?
Well, Inez, I'd invite everyone to go to United States Senator Martin Hinrichs' Instagram page and take a look. Martin posted something last night when he found out about this, just walking back to his apartment, explaining what this means. Republicans are trying to sneak in this notion of selling off all of our public lands, except for Montana, where my Republican colleagues in Montana, you know, they try to put a little sweetheart deal for themselves. It makes zero sense. But when this was identified in the House bill, we were all able to work together. United States Representative Gabe Vasquez led an initiative to pull that out. We thought it was
Ryan
dead.
Zinke,
well, no,
who's a Republican.
It's being revitalized by Senate Republicans.
Wow.
It's a mess right now. Yeah.
And could the Montana carve out make Zinke sit out now? Because isn't
I don't
he
know.
from
I mean,
yeah.
You know, it's another kickback. During the ACA, there was someone that tried getting a kickback for Nebraska. I think it was called the Cornhusker kickback. This is just another sweetheart deal that a couple folks tried to make. But I mean, it's going to backfire. People can see through this nonsense. And we're going to have to work hard to get it out, because now Daines is going to be silent as a Republican that says he's for protecting public lands. Well, Montana's out of this, so he's just going to be silent. So I don't know. We're going to have to work with more Western colleagues, because this really hits the Western part of America.
Right. They have always looked at us as a place to come exploit and then just leave alone after that.
Yeah.
Hello, this is Inez Russell Gomez, and we are back with Conversations Different. Senator Luján had to cut short his comments because A, he had to go vote, and B, as we learned in the last minute, in California, Senator Padilla was detained, arrested. We'll find out more, and by the time this airs, we will know, while speaking at a press conference where Secretary Kristi Noem was. So it's another escalation in the confrontation over deportation raids in California, where peaceful protesters and not so peaceful protesters are now being met with forces from the National Guard, not called out by the governor, but by the president over the objections of the governor and the mayor of Los Angeles. And who knows what will happen by the time this airs in terms of what's going on in Los Angeles. The idea that a sitting senator would be thrown to the ground is shocking. And Senator Luján had to go meet with his other colleagues to discuss this, and that will be happening now.
Mr. President, I'm sure the American people right now are just starting to see what happened to the United States Senator from California, the senior senator from California, Alex Padilla. He's at a press conference in California where the Secretary of Homeland Security is, and he wants to ask some questions. With all this going on in California, look, I don't know what all happened, but federal agents took him down. Took down a United States senator, that they're doing their job. Why aren't more people down here speaking up about this nonsense? This is ridiculous. I'd use some other language, but I'd probably get tossed off the floor right now. Growing up on a small farm and cleaning a barn, my dad taught me how to take a shovel to all the stuff that came out of the animals. You know what that's called. I know what it's called. And some of the animals that did that were males. They were bulls. And the stuff that came out of them has a few names to it. I'll call it manure today. This is nonsense. This is awful. How can these federal agents get away with this? Is the President of the United States telling folks to go down and start arresting United States senators, taking them down to the floor? Is that what we've come to? The executive branch doing this to our colleagues? This is a Democrat. What happens when it happens to a Republican? Will I hear from my Republican colleagues then to say, no, we should not do this, Mr. President? Back down, back off, you are wrong? Will someone here have the backbone to tell the President of the United States, you crossed the line, stop it? I'm so disappointed, so disappointed. And as a Latino United States Senator, for this to happen to another Hispanic here, there's several of us that are Hispanics here, Democrats and Republicans. Speak up. When one of my predecessors was here, Dennis Chavez, there were places he could not eat in this town because of the color of his skin, because he was from a state called New Mexico. Are we going to use our voices? Are we better than this in the United States of America? Or are we going to show all the other folks in the world that choose to do this to the people that were duly elected by their people? No, just go arrest them, throw them down on their face, treat them like garbage. We're better than this in America, y'all. We got to speak up.
Meanwhile, if you listened to Conversations Different before, you know that now we are on air and also video. So you can listen to us while you take your walk on your regular podcasts, whether you get it through Apple or Spotify or listen to it on the New Mexican homepage, or you can watch us on YouTube, because we are now going to a video format. And I hope that makes it more interesting to watch the expressions of the people we interview and to listen along as we ask questions. Thank you again for subscribing. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. And if you don't already, subscribe to the Santa Fe New Mexican. We are an independent, locally owned newspaper, and we are proud to have served you for going on now 176 years. This has been another Conversations Different. We'll be back next week.